If you are interested in getting engagement in the Balanced Scorecard as you roll it out, this video is for you. In this video I'm interviewing Steve Lunn, who was at Anglian Water when they were going through a transformation from a public sector organisation to a much more commercial one. And Steve tells the story of how he got engagement with his team in customer services, particularly how they changed the nature of their thinking to be much more commercial. But there's two other pieces in here that are worth looking for. One is that we did joined up organisations, so we looked at the links across the organisation between different departments, how they affected each other. And secondly, we were doing bottom up strategy. So if you are in a department, you're looking to get engagement, you're looking to change attitudes, you're thinking about how you can get joined up working, then this video will have something for you. Welcome everyone. I'm here with Steve Lunn, and this is a video talking about transformation and the Balanced Scorecard. Steve's an associate of Excitant, I'm Phil Jones, and we're just going to have a chat about some of the things Steve has been doing in actually creating great change and opportunities with it. So, Steve, how did we get started with this? It was a while back, wasn't it?
Gosh, Phil, yes it was. It was, I think, probably about 1997, 98, where I first met you, when you were, I think, brought into Anglian Water to do a piece of work, I think, across the organisation. And at the time I was working in the Customer Services Directorate, so just got a senior management post not long before that. And was introduced to the scorecard through you and the company you were working with at the time. And a completely new concept to me, I have to say, Phil. I'd never come across balanced scorecards before.
Okay.
Just moved into a change-orientated role within the organisation, which was really exciting at the time. But a new step for me from a sort of an accountancy background, as was before. And at the time, we were obviously bringing it within the organisation and within the Customer Services Directorate. We were trying to push on, probably do a restructure, had some tight targets to meet, both financial and non-financial, and I thought, wow, you know, here's a tool that I can use. I tend to think sort of, I think, strategically on things, and I thought, yeah, there's an opportunity here to use something. But the key is getting people bought into the concept, I think.
And on that subject of bought in, I remember at the time how enthusiastically you took to it. It was quite fascinating. You sort of picked up the elements of it, the cause and effect, the simple ideas within it, objectives before measures, and you just flew with it, didn't you?
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah, I think we'd had EFQM before.
Oh, okay.
So you know there were a few people who were converts of that and everything, but this was another stage really, and I think. Hopefully I sort of spread infectious enthusiasm across, but you know, other people have got to understand it as well, and I think the good thing was it wasn't sort of forced on people. No. It was, you know, here's something that we can use, very much left to individual directorates as to how they used it and where, and I think we entered into the spirit, and to be honest, it's proven a success. I've tended to use it wherever I can possibly since then. So that was my first, obviously, introduction really.
And I think you hit on a really important point. One thing I find is if people find it useful, they buy into it. You don't have to give them the techniques. You just get, explain the principles. Go, if you're thinking about this, how would it apply? And people just pick it up and run with it.
Absolutely, absolutely they do. And I was lucky in that I had some good people. I think it helps if you've got good people working alongside you and for you. And at the time I was very lucky. There were people whose minds were open to new things, and that obviously helped. So that was my sort of introduction in using the scorecard to push on and try and help the directorate meet its financial and non-financial targets, but particularly around crystallising the objectives within the directorate, which up to that stage had tended to be sort of almost either a reincarnation with a little bit of improvement from the previous year, or they were driven almost bottom up. They weren't driven top down from the organisation, filtering down from the company level to the directorate. So there was an opportunity to play that within the directorate level, but recognising that there was perhaps a bigger fish to fry in terms of welding it and merging it all together for the organisation.
And one of the things I remember in the several workshops we did together was how, as a team, you'd build up the picture of what you wanted to do with customer services, and how you wanted to improve it, and how you wanted to develop it, and the things that would drive change, and so that you could evidence change as well as you were passing it through. And that seemed to really get people enthusiastic, the idea of doing that complete picture.
It did. I think one of the interesting things was, especially with a regulated water industry, with a captive customer base, because there's no competition, and still isn't now within the domestic water market. Interesting to get people thinking about the concept of customer outcomes and what does that mean, whereas they were limited really to their thinking on regulatory targets focused on customers, but using the scorecard mechanism, enabling them to actually think, okay, fine, we have these financial targets, but hang on a minute, have we really thought about anything beyond the basic Ofwat measures at the time for customers? And then thinking, okay, fine, what has to be done in terms of process? I think that was the key area for me, the process area, because you then start thinking about the machinations within the directorate itself, and then obviously it helps you then think about beyond that, in terms of interdependencies and interfaces with other directorates across the organisation. So I would say it was a really useful tool for making people begin to think, actually.
The wider picture. Yes, because I remember we did a segmentation of those that were metered customers, those that were not metered, and the business customers, and that helped to segment in different ways you were doing things.
Absolutely.
And of course the other thing was, how do you contribute to perhaps another directorate's strategy map and their and what help do you need from other directorates? That was a big part of the things we did, wasn't it?
It was. Yes. I think our first thing was, okay, let's focus on the directorate, but then beyond that, and I mean, for any organisation, as I found since then, if you can get the buy-in to the concept, you can get people who've actually, I think they've actually got an issue within the business. That actually helps. Something that's going wrong, or
what do you need fixing?
Absolutely. Then it helps focus the mind on the end game, but on how to get there.
I think that this whole thing of what needs fixing was important, the way we did that project, because normally, as you say, you start with the corporate ones and you cascade through. And we didn't do that in Anglian Water. We actually did some initial work at the corporate level, then went to each of the directorates and said, here's the big goals, so what do you believe you can do to contribute to this? And then we looked at, picked up each of the directorates and said, you know what, this is actually starting to tell a story, but some need slightly different than you build them together and they add in. So it was much more of sort of emergent, bottom-up, with top-down guidance than the classic way of thinking about it, which was top-down. And I think that was actually quite powerful, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, using it that way, absolutely. And I've used it the other way as well. So it's interesting to see the different reactions. However, there's one common thing. At the end of the day, you've got to have people bought into it, and want to do it. So.
Excellent. So after that project, I mean, we're the classic consultancy of, okay, we've done our bit, over to you guys now, and the philosophy I have is very much, how can I get things into people's heads so they can do it themselves and be self-sustained? And you're a good example of that, Steve. You went on to do more work in transformation, I think, in Anglian Water, didn't you?
I did, yes.
That was just one of a series of interviews I've done with Steve. In other words, we talk about getting the top team engaged, how you prepare an organisation for changes to incentives and bonuses, and using the Balanced Scorecard to get the benefits of a project clearly defined and get engagements on it. There's also lots more case studies on our website, www.excitant.co.uk.